Everyone. Well, thank you for joining us today. My name is Michael Turek, and I'm Associate Director for the Milgard Center for Business Analytics. And we are here for part two of our three-part speaker series for our UW FinTech pitch, in which the University of Washington-Tacoma has collaborated with Sound Credit Union to find from our UW students across all three campuses the next big idea in financial technology that's going to help people and/or businesses manage their finances more efficiently or engage in financial decision-making with more confidence. This is a competition that, again, is open to students across all three campuses. The competition is open now, in which through our website, which we'll post here shortly in the chat, and our speaker will also be discussing, you can submit your idea via a lean Canvas template, and submissions are due by April 30th. And on that day, we will pick the top three ideas. And those three finalists will have an opportunity to present their idea at the end of May to a group of leaders from Sound Credit Union, leaders within the community, and also a group of potential investors. So today, for our talk, we are bringing you Delivering Your Winning FinTech Pitch. And I am proud to be joined by Dr. Phil Fawcett, who is going to be conducting this Lunch and Learn for us today. Dr. Phil Fawcett has spent 30.5 years at Microsoft, where he completed 25 product ships, conducted over 80 usability tests, engaged in worldwide technology transfer, filed 7 patents, and served as executive manager, individual contributor, and a technical evangelist. He has mentored more than 200 startups and entrepreneurs with reference to new technology development, business model development, coaching on how to create and deliver investor pitches, and development of traction with customers. He is also a lecturer here. He has taught in Seattle for their iSchool and other departments there, and is also, we're proud to have him teaching in our Master of Science in Business Analytics program this quarter. So I would like to turn it over now to
All right,
Dr.
thanks,
Phil.
Mike. All right. So everybody, welcome. I've got probably a larger Zoom audience than I do in person, but that's great. And we're going to kind of give you an idea of what the FinTech market's about. And then we're also going to cover characteristics of what a good entrepreneur is. And in a section, I have, do you have what it takes? And then I'm going to go through some pitch basics, flow of a pitch, what are some of the key ideas, and then time permitting, and I'm going to zoom through these slides, literally zoom with Zoomers, quickly so that we can actually get to the point where you come up with an idea and pitch it during a 1-minute pitch. We can do that over Zoom, and obviously we won't be able to do it in person as well. I thought you'd find that interesting. This is a pitch I gave last year. I took it from some entrepreneurial teaching I did at Oxford University in the UK. And then it just so happens that the person that I coached that made it to the top 3, which will also be part of what we'll do this next time through, is once we get to the top 3, I'll spend an hour to 2 hours with each group coaching. And but the person that I coached last year happened to win the contest. So I didn't see any of the money. I didn't see a commission or anything else, but he did really well. So that was great. So I'm not sure if my coaching was a differentiation, but maybe it was. So, but if you're, there we go. Okay. So if you're on Zoom, make sure you put your name out there. I think everyone's done that already, but go ahead and put your questions in chat. I'll probably try to do it real time if we can. And then we'll go from there. And then again, I use some bright slide colors in a couple cases, so you might have to put on your sunglasses. But I do that because you don't know what the resolution is on the other end of Zoom, so it helps. It's better to see. So anyway, all right. So you see my background. I currently teach computer science at PLU full time, and then I'm here as well. So I have a little bit of a busy schedule since I'm teaching 5 classes at the same time right now. But I've also done capstone projects, done about 125 capstone projects with graduate students and undergrads, working with sponsors outside, so I understand how that relationship, this kind of public-private partnership is part of it. And then I've also done my own international development work in several countries, volunteering on my own. So what you'll get from me is typically kind of a combination of I call myself a pracademic. Because I'm half academic with my PhD, and then I'm also have this big business background as well with this small company called Microsoft. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to just start out with what are successful characteristics of an entrepreneur, since that's kind of the idea that we're thinking about, kind of something new. And then I'm going to go and talk about FinTech Ground Zero, give you some principles, look at a few AI things. And then we'll switch gears and we'll go to looking at how to deliver a pitch. And I think you'll find that exciting if you've never done a pitch before. And also it'll give you some framework for future pitches. Because for example, when I taught at Oxford, we did 20 iterations of the pitches before we had demo day with the investors. We did that over a 10-day period. So we did 2 a day, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. We iterated a ton. So their pitches that they came in with the 35 entrepreneurs we were working with were clearly different by the time we got to the end. They did their 50-minute pitch for actual funding. And as noted up there, we actually got one person that was able to get eventually $5 million of funding for their business, trying to compete directly with Amazon in Africa with African goods. It's pretty interesting to see. Anyway, and then I'll have a good appendices. And then at the end, we'll do 1-minute pitches for some folks and see how they do. So, all right, so learning objectives here. I want you to leave this with having knowledge of the pitch, be able to understand some of the fundamentals. How to identify ways to turn your idea. It's going to have to be refined probably a few times into something that might be worth investing in. And then appreciation for good and bad investor pitch perspectives. I've even been in pitches where we had to just actually stop the pitch because the investor was looking on their phone, their watch. They clearly were disengaged after the first 2 minutes. You only have about 2 or 3 minutes to really get their attention. And so what we had to do is stop the process and just say, could you just give us feedback on the idea? And let's not worry about investment or anything else. We'll just take that off the table. And that kind of turned the tide a little bit. So you may get to that point as well. And then hopefully this will give you idea of, a good pitch is really a story, just like a good data visualization is. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So some of the general traits of entrepreneurs, 2 of my favorite ones, Bezos and Elon Musk. And so one of the things is they don't focus on the product. They focus or on necessarily on the innovation alone. They don't copy other existing business models. They're willing to take risks and experiment with their businesses. Obviously, we've seen that with Elon Musk and with Bezos, at least when they first started. So taking those 3 premises, what they typically do is they empower the product through their business model. They create a new business model that doesn't exist before, and that tends to be a little bit disruptive. If you think Amazon was not disruptive, you're not observing things. If you're Barnes and Noble, if you're XYZ shipping company, things like that, and you finally got the idea that maybe we should partner with Amazon instead of trying to compete with them. And I think that's one of the big changes there as well. And then they have to take some risk and experiment. So as an entrepreneur, are you risk averse or are you willing to take that on? And this next slide is going to cover some of the couple of characteristics. So do you have what it takes to be an entrepreneur? Do you have what it takes to create something new? And so a couple of things. One of the things I look at in entrepreneurs when I talk to them and coach them is do they have a passion? And that is also, it turns into energy. They have it because it's a long battle. You're going to hit a lot of no's, and you're going to go through some barriers. But it's a pretty good indication whether you have the passion or not and the energy. You have the energy, which can be focused all over the place, but then you have to also have the vision. What direction do you want to take it, and why do you want to take it? And then the third thing really is to be a promoter. You have to be willing to talk about your idea all the time. Your spouse has to finally say, could you quit talking about that idea, or your significant other? So you have to have those 3 characteristics. But I want to be clear, sometimes the most risky path is the inaction path, is not doing anything. And so at least figure out a way to step moving forward. In some cases, one of the big objections for entrepreneurship is people go, well, I just don't have time to do it. Well, so what I recommend is they kind of treat it as a hobby, nights and weekends, and start getting to the point where they can create a critical mass. And once you make the first few sales, you're on fire, and you'll have the energy and the passion and the direction to really get the thing to move forward. But those are some of the characteristics. So if I looked at FinTech in particular, you know, why is it important? Why do consumers care? Why is it, and FinTech obviously stands for financial technology, kind of abbreviation there. Since I've been in technology so long, I'll try not to use the word AI too many times, but it's actually used in two ways. One of the ways is obviously artificial intelligence, but the other way is assisted intelligence, where the computer and the human kind of work together and come up with the optimal decision. Now, I've got some ways it's affected the FinTech industry here in a second. And then, what is it? Again, it's kind of a catch-all term for software applications, and includes everything from just mobile payment apps all the way through actually doing automated, unassisted trading. It's primarily driven by two kind of technologies. One is the AI side, or basically figuring out what the pattern recognition is, building models, things like that. And then machine learning, learning from the existing data set and then moving that forward. And I have a student here that took 45 with me, which is business intelligence. And one of the things we did in that class is we build models, forecasting models. So why is it important? If you look at the global perspective, there are clearly some critical masses on the East Coast and West Coast of the US, but it's also growing a lot in Europe. And that's where one of the biggest dots is on this. So this is a survey that was done. You can refer to it, do an internet search on it, on Start US Insights. And pretty interesting to see where the growth is happening. Still not as much in the developmental countryside. And the reason is that, and I work with the folks from South Africa and a few other folks that were working for FinTech when I taught at Oxford. And their big idea was, you know, how do they reach the unbanked? No one has a bank account in some of those environments. And that's where the growth is as well, potentially. So hopefully we'll get a couple ideas that might affect that space globally as well. And then, so the reasons that people use FinTech, a couple of reasons. Consumers are willing to take their bank, their data with organizations outside the US, at least, or outside their realm of control. Consumers want to look at non-financial aspects too. I just got during one of the spinning classes I was taking, I've got an ex-Microsoft guy come up to me and says, hey, do you know how to create, we'd like to put a fund together that basically buys pieces of art and then puts them in a storage area and then sells them 5 years later for 20x return on investment. Oh, okay. So there's a lot of different ways of looking at finance as well, and even what is money for that matter. And then the big driving technologies are blockchain to some degree, that allows decentralized transactions. And also on the AI side, part of the driver here when you have a banking operation, financial operation, is to reduce the cost. So how do you affect the operational costs as well? And that's another way to be able to do that. And so on the AI side, there's 4 or 5 trends. The algorithmic trading one is an interesting one. Obviously, credit scoring is a big AI function. Doing, you know, taking out the middle person, which has been some component of financial and banking for a lot, and be able to verify that that is a correct transaction, then also be able to take that out and move that forward faster. Obviously, there's robotic advisors. I get a little nervous with robotic advisors personally, but that's me. But obviously, if they bring you success in terms of return on your investment portfolio, then it's probably a good thing to do. I don't think there's anything. There's a panacea that someone told me about that maybe they could have a riskless investment that could somehow give them using technology to get a high return on investment with no risk. And I go, well, when you can bring that to the market, let me know. But I don't think it's out there. So having some of these things at least allows you to do forecasting, predictive analytics, other kinds of things as well. Again, through this, and I'm not going to paint a future of, we're going to get rid of every single bank. But one of the futures to think about is, because of AI, one of the futures to think about though is, do bankers become technologists, and can technologists become bankers, or is there going to be a fusion between the two? Again, this might be 5 or 10 years out, but kind of an interesting thing to think about as we move forward with some of these technologies. But AI also has its downside. The algorithms still aren't developed, and they move so fast that how can they quickly update it? And the amount of data that we're collecting also goes up as well, exponentially almost every day. So interesting challenge there on the software side. And here are some kind of trends in the innovation side of things, and kind of where the differentiation. I have a heat map that maps this too. But open banking starting to be an interesting thing where different financial institutions partner together and actually develop a product that connects the dots there instead of having these very siloed ones. There's a note here on quantum computing, and I got to work with a Fields Medal winner for about a year. That was a quantum computing expert in Microsoft Research, and the computational power is pretty amazing. It just hasn't been harnessed and focused on and harnessed in FinTech, but when it does, it'll add some significant power. And also you have to think about cybersecurity as well. So now if you're storing everything in some virtual storage place, whether it's in the cloud or some other differentiated storage area, now you have hackers getting in there and wanting to do that. And so you have to put a premium on the cybersecurity side. There's a number of other areas as well. But again, this is pretty current information, at least as of September 23. So it's at least 6 months out. If I did a heat map of the top 10, AI is clearly one of the big drivers. A thing called DeFi, which is basically decentralized finance, mostly enabled by blockchain, and then digitizing everything. Wallets are, cash becomes a kind of thing of the past, and then there's no intermediary, so that's another thing as well. And then there's other areas as well that are different. This BNPL2O, this buy now pay later, is also emerging as a possibility. And again, cybersecurity needs to be in there as well to kind of keep things balanced out. If we don't, we're going to be in trouble. So kind of gives you a heat map of where the FinTech space is. And again, I'm hoping that those of you that listen to this, either now or in the future, will be able to think about some new ideas that connect to these, or even ideas that aren't even on this heat map that maybe could be disruptive, innovative for South Sound and a few others. So some of the advantages, accessibility, time, different opportunities that didn't exist, that wasn't accessible, that you have to go through a formal brokerage system for. And then also there's a cost reduction as well. So obviously that's more profit. So it has some interesting benefits there, but there's also some downsides too. Some disadvantages, people still like the physical human contact. And so there's no physical branches. So where do you go if you have a problem, or you sit on the phone for hours with a bot first for an hour and a half, and then finally get to a human, things like that. So there's some downside. Also, not everybody has a smartphone. Surprise, surprise. But I did a capstone project up at UW Seattle with King County Metro that was basically trying to get everyone to have virtual bus tickets and virtual tickets for the light rail. But the problem is that not everybody had a smartphone, and not everybody had the kind of phone that you could use these virtual tickets with. And it became a huge challenge. However, they were running into a problem where they were spending $20, $30 million just managing all the cash, and also having a liability to the drivers themselves. So that was an interesting problem we looked at. But again, not everybody has a smartphone. And even we put a program together partnering with Apple and a few others to actually give out smartphones, but it still wasn't quite enough to make a difference. Also, this area in FinTech is not really regulated. And those that are in government entities that are responsible for that get a little bit uptight about that and not be able to understand, monitor these transactions. So there are some downsides to FinTech as well to think about, but I think the benefits clearly outweigh these challenges. There we go. So this is just a profile of FinTech apps and some of the sectors they involve. I point that at the very bottom, I really highly recommend once you get the slide deck to click on that, because there's actually a full 50 startup pitches. And they're pretty amazing. You can look at them virtually. Obviously, they want you to sign up for their newsletters and all these other things, but you can actually click through the slides. So if you want an example of a FinTech pitch for, let's say, a $50 million, and we're talking about a $10,000 prize here, not 50 million, but just to be clear, it's the place to go. And they have it by industry. So if you want to do that, it's a really powerful site, highly recommended, and it's current. So they have the top, as of 2024, they have the top 50 FinTech pitches that are done, worth looking at. I have that end as reading as well. But there's a variety of industries that we just talked about, and I will go through a couple of detail here. So some of the key things, at least for startups, think about what the regulatory costs are, if any, as they get it off the ground. What kind of technology investments do they make? You're basically, when you're a large financial institution, you're basically dependent on the IT department and other folks to be able to make decisions. And the problem is, if you make the wrong investment there, that could be a huge challenge and a huge barrier to make the switch once you've committed to a specific technology. And then also user acquisition costs. That's a key thing too. There's one of the reasons Microsoft, just as a total sidebar story, one of the reasons they acquired Skype was that the user acquisition costs were so low. They forget it versus, let's say, buying one of the existing telcos. So that was the easiest way to do it, and it was significantly less by several $100 per user. That's one of the reasons they bought Skype is when we went through that acquisition. And also the technology scales a little better too, but you have to be able to be smart about how you do that. So there's three different applications in the FinTech sector. I'm going to just briefly go through each, how they make money, how they operate their business. So one of them is Coinbase. And again, if you want to make the connection to see the FinTech pitch about Coinbase, you can go to that site that I had at the bottom 4 slides ago, and also in my recommended reading, and you're able to take a look at what Coinbase's pitch was. But basically what they do is they offer 4 products that can choose a simple web app. They have, and then obviously they have an upgrade to Pro where you could have a better design UI and use trading tools. They have a wallet and a Coinbase card as well. Eventually, I don't think there'll be any physical credit cards if we think about what the future might look like. Another area of differentiation too, frankly, from the student population that's here, is thinking about how would you manage student financing and student loans? Is there a more creative way to do that? Is there a better way to do that other than the federal loan program? Not that those are bad, but is there a way to do that? I even took advantage of that myself for my own PhD, but there might be some things as well. So eventually things will, and so Coinbase is trying to figure out how to create a virtual card as well. And then another one is Robinhood, which is a completely freemium business model, which is interesting, but they make money through the transactions, and they allow you to quickly have access to having to call up the broker or work through the broker or go to the broker online, or trying to be your own day trader, which I've seen people, get up at 6 o'clock to do their analysis, and then when the market opens, boom, they're ready to go. And I've seen a lot of day traders there, but this allows you a quick way to be able to do that, and it's kind of democratized finance. Does a very good job at that. And then a pretty, at $6 a month, pretty low. And then they also have a thing called Crunchbase, and they're also able to raise $5.6 billion. Please come in, and which is interesting as well, just their capital. So its valuation is pretty good, and they continue to be able to raise money. So investors are interested in that. Then one last one is Nubank, which is out of Europe, and they offer some subscriptions. They offer no overdraft fees, so they do a good job with that. And they recently raised about $2.3 billion. Again, you can see all these on that site with the 50 FinTech pitches, which is, again, a powerful way to see how they actually pitch their idea, which is what this kind of discussion is about. And then there's also one Mint, again, a money manager, allows bill tracking, credit scores, and a few other things as well. But they've done a really good job as a company. So there's just 4 examples. Come on, mister. Oh, there we go. All right, sorry, thanks, Mike. So my clicker sometimes, I think it's from overuse, sometimes wigs out of me. So here's kind of a break point. So if you're in the audience here physically, or if you're virtually, I want you to think about two things, because when I ask for pitches at the end, the 1 minute pitches, and I have a Starbucks card. If I need to get the names from Mike, your emails from Mike, I can do that. But write down one of our areas you're dissatisfied with the current financial banking industry. And then what are you dissatisfied with? And then secondly, what do you want to do that you can't do today? And those are where the new ideas come from, thinking about those two kinds of questions. And even if you have to invent the future, that's okay. Because really, when you do a startup, it's very disruptive, and you're thinking about a new business model that maybe in some cases doesn't exist today, or takes advantage of an existing system that has no one has thought to connect the dots with. So that's kind of power. So think about that a little bit. Maybe you have an idea you might want to bring to bear. And so we're going to switch gears and kind of go to how you make a pitch and go through that. Again, I've coached about 200 startups and actually sat in some of the pitch meetings. Some cases I cringed, in some cases I was elated, in some cases we actually got funding. So what are some of marketing lessons to get noticed and eventually funded as well? So really the goal of any pitch is to tell me more. That's what you want the audience to do. Tell me more. You want them so excited in about the first 2 or 3 minutes that they, keep talking. Wow, this is super exciting. Wow, it's the best thing I've heard all week. Or a month or a year, that kind of thing. So you really want to get to the point. And if you get that reaction, you've done something right. And then another one is to remind them, and it's not about you. I've had some pitches where it started out with, we work in the, we work down in the industry side of Tacoma on the waterfront. We're working out of a couple of old warehouses down there. They kept talking about that for the first 10 or 15 minutes. It's like, okay, what is your business and what problem are you solving? And they didn't get to it. And even though I coached them, they still went off on this thing. And so you just have to remember, it's not about you. It's about your customer. It's about understanding the investor and understanding your own market and your own offering and how you're going to get there. But it's not about you. And that's kind of a hard part to for a lot of investors or a lot of entrepreneurs to think about. And also, you need to lead with the customer problem. What problem are you solving for the customer? And not what cool technology, there's a Far Side cartoon where he talks to his dog, and the dog, it shows what the dog is hearing, and the dog is hearing blah, 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 and then their name, and then blah, 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 blah. So sometimes analogously, we're in the same thing with all the buzzwords in technology, specifically in FinTech and other areas too. We're talking about all that cool AI technology and but we never really get down to, so what are you gonna do? And how are you gonna take what you're doing and turn it into customer value? And how are you gonna continue to fund that? And how are you gonna grow that? And those are all things that as an investor, I would ask. So know your personas, and I'll talk about personas in a second. I'm also going to talk about positioning statement, how to write one. I actually have a fill in the blank thing we can look at. And then, so creating a persona basically helps you empathize with who your target audience is, whether it's a group of real estate agents or whether it's someone else, students, whatever. Even the other thing that is interesting, I'll be clear to anybody listening to this, is there's a profit and there's a nonprofit side of this as well. So there might be interesting nonprofit ideas, new ways of bringing in donors and other things that might be really interesting as well, might be worth a funding of an idea for. So don't forget that both those are there. The other dimension is US versus domestic versus even emerging markets. So think about that as well as new ideas that if you have expertise there. But the idea here is, how would you create just a 3-letter, 4-letter sentence about your user, who that is. We used to do this in Microsoft all the time. In fact, it got to the point where when you're in a design meeting, you basically would say, well, how does that affect Bill? And how does that affect Jim? And those are names of personas. And that's what the thinking was about once you've done a huge amount of market research and really then created these personas. And I've got some examples, but for this particular example that might connect with those FinTechs, this might be a few of the executive types that you look at. So one of the goals here, when you think about when you do your pitch, is create a persona. And then personas look something like this. This is kind of an eye chart for those in the Zoom audience and in here as well. But it gives you an idea of a 2 to 3 word description, a few more details of what that persona looks like. Once you have 2 or 3 of these, you might need to validate them a little bit, but now you have a direction. Again, one of the things we talked about at the very beginning, what it takes to create a new idea is to have a direction. It's great to have energy, but you have to have a direction as well. So that's part of this, helps you get focused on who your users are and what their characteristics are. And then the reason they're powerful, it can be directed to the right persona, so you can have a specific message for each one. It also allows you to prioritize your development process. And it also allows you to figure out what their values are and meet their values. And then it also simplifies things as well. You can get really complicated in some of these things as well in your market analysis, spend all the time analyzing the market and everything else and not enough time doing, which if you're an investor, you don't like that to happen because you're not going to get a return for a longer period of time. But creating persona is definitely something you should do and make it part of your pitch. Also, a positioning statement is part of this as well. And again, I have this little pioneer that says, "We are here." This basically talks about what your target market is, what audience you're going for, and also, it kind of becomes integrated, the cornerstone of your marketing campaign. I have a slide in a slide or two which actually takes you through this. In fact, it's right here. So, and if you were going to create, you can just use this as a template, to whatever target market you're looking at. Your product name is the one, what category you're in that has the key customer benefit, what benefit in the FinTech space might this have? And then how does it, based on what you're trying to offer, how does this differentiate from everything that's out there today? So in 6 fill in the blanks, you can now have at least a rough draft positioning statement, which helps you your first 2 minutes to get the attention of the investor. So it start out with a positioning statement typically. And then, so some questions to ask that investors will always ask, and it's kind of a pattern is, why are you building this? What's the persona's perception of your offering? And then how have they coped with the issue before? What's their coping strategy today? And what is the competition now? Or how are they perceived, and how are you going to go against that competition? And then how do we believe what the strengths and weaknesses are? And I actually have an example here. I didn't do a FinTech example. I actually have an example called Gleam R, which is a car wash franchising thing. But I've got the full pitch there, which we'll forget to. And then what really value do they bring to the table? Then what are your firsts? What is a customer first experience? What are the only, meaning only you have the offerings? And then what are the onlys as a group of offerings? And you saw some of those already on the 3 or 4 examples I gave of FinTech offerings today, but also those are important as well. So, and then, so what's your story? And nobody likes to be sold to messaging. Your messaging must have relevance, and messaging must tell a story to engage the prospects so they respond with the infamous, as I said at the very beginning, tell me more. I mean, they're open, they're engaged, they're listening. If they're not, then you need to change something so that you can get that target audience re-engaged. And then, what do all these books have in common? Obviously, they're all by different authors. Basically, they all tell a story. The story kind of follows this. Something happens to upset the status quo, which is what most startups do. This is called the hero's journey. And they create there's a tension there between what the hero wants to do and what the scenario is. And then the hero works to restore some kind of balance. It may be a new thing, but they restore some in the ecosystem. And ultimately, they prevail and life returns to normal, or in our case with a startup, better than normal. So it kind of has, all those stories have that commonality just at a very high level. Obviously, some of the Harry Potter books are 600 pages long. It takes a while to get those 4 key points. So, but it's still something to think about when you're talking store, when you're talking about, being a promoter, which is one of the characteristics I mentioned in the beginning, and be able to talk about your story. And then, so on the business side, which is maybe slightly different, how do you engage with the personas you've created? And then what are some of the solutions? What thought leadership are you providing that doesn't exist today? And then how does your product service reinforce this key point? And also, how do you highlight the value and rewards you're providing? And you can see those 4 things, the freemium model, and a few other things that I talked about with Mint and a few others as well. But really talk about a customer use story. Obviously investors want to be able to have a traction before they jump in. They want to be able to know that you've already sold something or you already have engagement. That doesn't always happen, especially with new technology development, but sometimes it can. And then here's a tool called the message box. The customer is the hero of the story, not the product. Keep that in mind. And it's a tool that you can basically fill in to kind of create a framework for talking to, and you can do it in 90 seconds or less. So kind of an interesting conversation starter if you have it. So your offering is in the middle, and then what engagement message are you going to say? What issue will bring the persona's attention? What problem of theirs are you solving that they can't solve today with existing solution? And then what solutions are you going to provide? And then how do you reinforce that message with other differentiation? And then as a result of implementing your solution, how will their life be better? That's the hard part. That's something you're gonna have to think through as you put this together. But this message box is a very easy way of taking your target persona and then analyzing it relative to the offering, relative to these 4 points as well. Again, you can do it in 90 seconds or less, which is a powerful way to integrate into your pitch. So if I looked at the pitch flow, it looks something like this. So here's a sample pitch in 5 minutes or less. So obviously you want to have a killer one-liner. And one of the things I did with the entrepreneurs at Oxford is we spent a whole morning coming up with killer one-liners for their ideas. And it took a while to get something that really resonated. And then what problem are they trying to solve? What solution? What product? And by step 4, you kind of, and then what business model? And any investor asks this question, how are you going to make money off this? And that's key to be able to show. You don't have to have a full set of financials. They can be rarely rough. But if you just show them what's called in the entrepreneurial world, a hockey stick, which goes like this and then up, 3 years later, they're going to have some suspicions about that. So those are kind of how you basically have the flow. Again, this is the long form. So this means you've already cleared it with the investor team that you're pitching to, that you have maybe an hour, 45 minutes to be able to do this. And then, so do you have traction? And meaning, do you have existing users that are using your product? Have you market tested it to some degree? That's also why Mike and I are trying to figure out how to bring a customer discovery process that's done up at CoMotion up in Seattle and trying to bring it down here so we can kind of get the ecosystem going. And they have a really good program up there. I've sent a lot of students through it. And you actually end up with right now $1,000 to be able to do customer discovery with it. And then you can go for some additional funding as well, which is good. And then again, in this example, you talk about what the market opportunity is. This tends to be some quote from McKinsey or someone else. So you have to be really careful with this number, but because it can get, everything is a multi-billion-dollar market, which it really isn't. You're going to have to segment it out a little bit. And then who's the competition? And if you say there's no competition, investors probably going to like that. You have to have done your homework to be able to do that. And also, what's your growth strategy? How are you going to go from here to there? And then what do your financial projections look like? Probably 3 years out's enough. They might want more, but at least, and try not to do too much of the hockey stick. We start out with 2 years of loss, and then by the 3rd year, all of a sudden there's a 5,000% growth. I wonder how that happened. So, and then what does your team look like? And this is a typical thing I run into when I coach entrepreneurs is the investors like the idea, but not the team. Or they like the team, but they don't like the idea. So that's really an interesting thing to balance between the two. Or they like the idea and they have another team they want to put on it, not you. That tends to be a challenge as well. So, and then, what kind of funding are you looking for? And then come up with a summary that connects the dots with the prior thing. So this is a long form. You have an hour. It's not the short form. I have a short form one as well, which I use with hackathons to be able to do a quick pitch as well. We'll get to that in a second. And any questions from the audience so far, Mike? Anything in the chat?
We have a couple things here in the chat.
Okay.
I think you had a framework earlier that this is referring to.
Okay.
Earlier on, with a question, there's no credit card online, opening portal or online consultation, even on app to help clients who are busy and or don't understand much about opening a credit line.
Yeah.
Another one submission.
And the question there is, are they credit worthy? And that's another part of what AI can do for you as well, is be able to figure that out. Or figure out a way to at least build that up, right, over time. Yeah.
Yeah, one more here, following up to question one about online credit card opening. I look forward to seeing what FinTech can do to help create cybersecurity for clients to both protect their personal information and give out the best credit card options for customized needs.
Right, exactly. So again, that's where some of these, again, AI and machine learning things can actually help figure out the optimum path. And there are services out there, but I think it needs improvement. I think it's still in the initial stages. So interesting. And cybersecurity is still a challenge. It's getting more and more complex. To be able to, Mike and I always laughed at when we log on to the UW system, we have to go through 2FA or two-factor authentication. And it takes, forever just to log on. And yet we've come to that point where that's what you need to do because people love to hack university systems and other things as well. So the question is, what is the next, what is the next 2FA, how we could even get better at what we're doing? And that's also where quantum computing comes into play as well. Okay, cool. So I could go through this. In fact, I'll do a quick. So this is a full pitch. I'm not going to take the full time, but this is on-demand auto detailing, and this is the killer one-liner: get an affordable professional auto detail wherever you are, wherever you want. So that really is, I think, an effective job of creating what their business is all about. So on the FinTech side, there might be another thing that you could put in there in a very, very quick one-liner. In fact, this is probably how you should start your pitch, is with this one-liner. And then, so the problem is that they're solving is people want to keep their cars at a high level. There's no really single way to do it. And the mobile operators, they spend too much time and funding and money to be able to get themselves going. And so they're kind of two problems, both at consumer, direct to consumer level, and also the auto detailer industry as well. So they're trying to hit both with this strategy. And then, so their solution is on both segments. So they've segmented the market already. There are 3 slides in, how to be able to have these great benefits of saving time, money, and getting high quality, and also then enabling a cadre of detailers as well. So they're, again, going for these 2 different markets and be able to do that through their app and website. And then they talk about what they've done. They actually have some technology patents that are pending, which means that they've got some protection, which means that the investor could be happy because now they have a unique value add. And then you might need those are not amazing screenshots, just to let you know, those are just samples, but you need to be able to have those in place as kind of a quasi demo, even if your code's not working, right? And then also, what is their business model? So here's the actual what they charge and per job, and they collect monthly fees from the auto detailers as well. So they have kind of a 2-pronged business model. And then how they got traction. So it's pretty interesting. So now that they're at 101,000 per month, they definitely have some critical mass. They're out there actually actively working with customers, but obviously they need a larger investment in order to grow the level they want to. So they have strong traction already, but how do they make it even stronger? And that's why they're asking for the money for the investment. So having something like this, we actually have figured out a way to test your idea and also have them have continued investment and actually getting to the point. Really what you're trying to establish is one key thing. Are customers willing to pay for the solution that you're offering? And if they are, then you definitely will have a easier time to get investment. And then they talk about, again, this is the big, 36 billion, big hand waver. But they also talk about what the other opportunities are for the two markets they're looking at. And they don't talk about the percentage that they expect to capture. That's where it gets a little crazy. But at least they're letting you know, again, you'll need a reputable source for all of those. And then they also talked about what the market opportunity is from the bottom up and kind of look at where the number of autos on the road, how many might want to be detailed, et cetera, and kind of build a little mini business model. And then backed by reputable sources. Then they kind of give the standard for where the competition is, where Gleam sits, and where the other ones as well. So basically, in a simple way, you can talk about what the competitors are. And then they talk about what their growth strategy is too, each point across marketing and sales to acquire new customers. How do they keep the existing ones? And then also how do they continue to have a competitive product? So that's definitely a good way to grow in terms of, I asked that question. I had that one slide where I said, what are the 4 or 5 questions that investors typically ask? So this is a projection. This is not too bad. It's a little hockey stickish because you're losing 1.9 million year 1 and 4.8 in year 2. Cumulatively is 6.7, but then they come back with something stronger. So it's a little bit of a hockey stick, but it's also talking about what the investment might be able to bring us to bear as well. And then what they're asking for is 2 million. And then some valuations as well. And then their goal is to use this money to reach 48 million in sales. So that's definitely a good use of the fund by bootstrapped already. So that means that the founders are committed and they've used their own money. I've known folks that have actually mortgaged their house, taken a loan out on their house, other things as well. So they're putting everything on the line. And then in summary, these are the 4 or 5 things. Again, you also look at the killer one-liner and connect the dots, but how they're able to do it. And they have some technology execution. They also have patents out there, and they've already got pretty significant traction. So that's the start. So as an investor, if you looked at this and walked through it, you go, maybe there's an opportunity here for me to invest in. Maybe it's high probability that I get a return on my investment. And then, here's the template, fill in the blank. And if you want to do it 2 or 3 minutes, what's your one-liner, who are your customers, what problem are you solving, and how are we going to make money, and what's our competitive advantage? You could fill those in just a quick minute or 2. You could definitely move your idea forward. And this also connects back to Gleam 2, what it does with the on-demand app. It also talks about making money by collecting 15% of the transaction fee. And also they're kind of a first mover as well because they're doing both markets at the same time. And then, that gives you a full pitch. Again, I would also look at this first resource up here, which is the 5, there's 50 FinTech pitches. There's also 500 most successful startup pitches out there. This Valerie.com worth looking at. Then also there's pitching hacks as well. And then just in case you go to a hackathon, here's a mini pitch, right? So if you want to do it in 90 seconds or less, you start it with 1 to 2 sentences of what the problem is. Then you go to describe your solution. Then you go to present your objectives of what you've done. And it says during the weekend, but obviously this is for like a 48-hour weekend hackathon. Then you outline the set of skills that are in your group. And then these are examples of it. And then you choose your fire pitch, I call it, with the final call to action. My vision is to build blah, 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 or our vision is to do that. So in 90 seconds, which is typically what happens to do a fire pitch is what they call it for these weekend hackathons. And then they want you to do a demo as well to actually put the code together. This is a short form elevator pitch that if you're a promoter, which is one of the characteristics of an entrepreneur, you can do this. If someone says, tell me about your business, and looks at their watch, you can do it in 90 seconds or less. So again, another really quick way of doing this. Obviously, this is not a long-term thing that you want for an hour pitch for $50 million or things like that. But it's a very quick, short way to get their attention to maybe get invited back to the conference room or take it from there. So I've got, does anybody, there we go. So one of the things that Michael and I are offering too is to do some with when you get to the top 3, even before that too, if you want to, is to do mentoring and coaching. So like I said, last year, I was able to coach the winning FinTech contest entrepreneur, which is great. So more than glad to figure out how we may be able to do those as well. So we're trying to put some office hours between now and and when the contest actually happens. And then, so I'm not sure with 5 minutes to go, if anybody on the online side or in this room wants to do a pitch, but it's you know, I've got some extra Starbucks card in my bag. And so if you do a pitch for a minute or so and just talk about who you are, what's your problem, what's your proposed problem, even if it's made up, I'll give you a $5 Starbucks card. And if you're online, I'll have Michael give me the emails so I can send you a virtual one as well. So is anybody interested in trying to do a quick stand-up one? Anybody have that online? And if not, that's fine too. I'll close out, but
Hi, Aaron.
I'm interested, yes.
okay, cool. And I'll have to
Yeah,
get,
so I just saw that that commentary in the chat, so I got a little inspired by that because I have to file my taxes this week. Yeah, so I guess first we'll leave with the problem. So in the US, everyone has got to pay their taxes, or at least we think we do. We actually don't know if we need to file our taxes or not. So that's another problem all on its own. So what I'm proposing is that we have a simple mobile app that educates people on how to file their taxes, because as we know, there's no formal required education in our schooling system to do so. So having it as an app is something that a lot of people are familiar and comfortable with, and it would be an easy way to guide them through the process. So we can have a simple user interface just to figure out who our users are first, like do they need to file their taxes or not? That can already give them some comfort about knowing what they need to do. And then the next thing is to determine exactly what kind of taxes they need to file. So then we can also guide them through those various processes as well. Because the main competitors we have right now are either something older like TurboTax, which is established, but you have to pay some amount for it. And the other free option is the IRS website, which has all these resources, but they're not necessarily arranged in a way that's the most user-friendly. So what we can do is actually take all these free resources available online right now and arrange them in a way that is user-friendly. And for how we would monetize this, we would probably go for an ad-based model to support all the users who would like to use the service for free and not pay for something like TurboTax.
cool. So your proposal is to an app development that's basically focused on someone's ability to, or necessity to pay taxes or not, where they might stand and how they might go through the process of filing. And maybe even have a referral service that connects to CPAs or another service that's able to do it. So interesting idea. And so it sounds like a pain point that you're currently experiencing as well, and wish that you had had that application already in place.
Definitely.
Cool.
So,
Cool.
I think I had an idea.
Okay.
So I'm sure most of us have had to deal with getting a credit card for the first time.
Okay.
It's an interesting process, and you can't always it can be a difficult process, especially if you're young. And my proposal was an app that would simplify the process and give advice to young people who are looking to get their first line of credit, or maybe someone who's trying to rebuild their credits.
And to be able to have a system to do that.
Yeah,
And
to like make an app that simplifies the process.
and how would you balance the risk to the bank, to the financial institution? How would you go through that process?
Well, you could start off with small amounts of credit to make sure that the person was reliable, like
Yep.
not giving them a huge line of credit, just a pretty small one. It would help everyone build up their credit while also posing minimal risk to the bank.
And also be able to prove the payback ability, which is not a real word, but the ability for the person and this is done by some of the banks that were into developing markets, where they loan money out to craftspeople that and workers that were making crafts to sell, and they were previously unloanable. But at least in the banker's mind, because Grameen Bank is the one that started this, and so you're proposing to do it with students, similar kind of thing. So there might be a model you might be able to bring to bear there.
Yeah.
So very cool. All right.
Thank you.
Oh, we've got a pitch, and thanks, Clarissa. Thanks, Clara. Yeah. Oh, wow. Stand up. That would be great. Thank you.
So,
And before you start, thanks for the two online, Aaron and Clara as well. Thank you very much for jumping in.
so what is the single most thing that everyone has to deal in their life, whether they like it or not, whether they want it more or not? It would be money,
Okay.
right? And as an international student, and as someone from a young age, we go to banks, I see people from different age sectors, people with different languages coming in. So I might be good with my money in India, like my home country, but when I come here, I don't understand dollars. Like every time I need to see something, I need to see conversions. Like, hey, what is $100? Like every time I have to do it, I need to recalculate it to hundreds, like zeros, then come back. So for everyone who's international, irrespective of age, like let's say they're coming from Latin America, they're coming from Europe, they're coming from Asia, every banking service that is provided, it would be really helpful if they have a country's like US dollars, and in brackets, any country we choose, that country's denomination shown. And this would be helpful even for Americans, like whoever is using dollars when they travel internationally. Like when they go, even they need to calculate, oh, I have to pay like 3,000 rupees. How much is it in my dollars? So instead of them taking a separate app to calculate, like conversion app, the bank shows you directly how much is what. So this, my friends, is second language for your money.
Okay, second language for even have a tagline.
Yeah.
Whoa. And you would do this as a digital wallet?
This should be integrated in every banking app. Like
Okay.
I use SoundCredit. That's my account, like my bank account.
Okay.
So whenever I open my account, it shows me how much balance I have or how much I need to pay my bill. So every time there's like dollars listed, the bracket shows up in Indian currency because I chose Indian rupees.
Yeah.
Like let's say you chose euros, it shows how many euros,
Got
like
it.
equivalent, like conversion in the same place.
Got it.
Don't need to go to other apps.
Got it. Got it.
That's my
Makes
pitch.
sense. Yeah, and actually, very good, thank you. At Oxford, I had someone propose this idea for Africa. And the reason is that they go through, they actually had a conversion where your digital wallet would automatically convert to the currency you're going into. So you go from Tanzania to South Africa, it would take the same amount of funds you had in there and convert it to either South African currency or Tanzanian currency, be able to do that.
Yeah.
Similar thing to India as well. I've only been to Bangalore about 10 times, so I don't know the whole country. It's huge. I could spend 25 years of my life touring it and still not see everything. But each sub area has their own language,
Oh,
right?
yes.
And so to be
Yeah.
able to have that conversion of, at least for money, have that commonality, I
Yeah.
think could be really powerful.
Everyone, like all over India, we use like rupees. And the thing is, when you change the language thing, it changes everything. So
Right.
then you don't see dollars.
Right.
Like, you know, you have to pay this much amount of rupees, but you don't see dollars at the same time.
And it's
So
been
you need to
ingrained
see
to
two
you
things.
for the because of the culture you emerge from, right?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's the point, right? So it
I could
doesn't,
be someone who is from Texas, who's new to mobile banking.
Yep.
And I could be, let's say, traveling to like Latin America just for a trip. And I don't know how much to pay for a vendor.
yep.
So I know dollars, so I get to know the local currency in the brackets.
And then you know also whether it's fair, it's a fair value too.
Yeah, so it's like every time I speak English, sometimes I have to go to my regional language, convert it in my head, then speak out in English.
Yep,
So it happens with money too. So this time we don't need to do that.
very good. All right, thank you. Cool. Anyone else, either online or in person? Well, thank you very much. I hope this has been informative. It's been recorded, so you can go back through it and look at the resources, and then we'll figure out a way to get the slides out there. I highly recommend looking at those FinTech pitches on Valerie. It's a very professional done website, but also allows you to look at a wide variety of pitches. So thank you. Have a good afternoon, and please enter the contest. Michael's put that out there in the invite, how to be able to do that, but we'd love to have more people jump in so we can have a wider variety of ideas. All right. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Bill, thank you so much. I just want to cap us off again a little bit more about some details about the competition and the structure. For our UW FinTech pitch, this is actually phase one of a two-phase competition. Okay, so at this point, again, it opened on March 25th. We're accepting applications through April 30th. And all you have to have is your idea. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for the new idea. Okay, so don't be discouraged if you're like, I don't have this app or I don't have this prototype. That's part of a future phase, which I'll talk about here in a second, where we can help you get there. Okay, so phase one, you just submit your lean canvas idea on the website. Again, we're going to select the top 3 ideas. They have an opportunity to present their idea. They also have an opportunity to access to coaches like Phil to help them develop their pitch, and the winning idea and the winning pitch will receive $2,500 cash. In phase 2, which begins this summer and it will end in September, that again is for the idea. It's open to anyone that lives, works, or studies in Washington State. And the winning prize for that idea is $10,000 plus a 6-month membership to CoMotion Labs in Seattle. So that's the full details of that, and please participate. We look forward to having your idea.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. All right.
Oh, that was
That's been a
great,
good-
Phil. Thank